Afternoon. Today is Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. My name is Justin Coffin, and this is the 330 Sports Show. We are broadcasting live from downtown Youngstown, Ohio, and we are produced by Joe Danier's Youngstown Studio Network. We're going to switch it over here to an ad from our sponsor, Coca's Pizza.
Attention all football fans. If you can't see your team play, come and dine with us and watch it live at Boardman, Canfield, or Cortland. Or staying at home, we'll deliver right to your door. That's Coca's Pizza. We serve it hot.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guests. We've been truly blessed the last two shows. We had an iconic Youngstown figure, President Trussell, on Thursday. And today we have another great guest, world famous, coming in today. So my guest today is was a professional boxer from 2000 to 2012, where he competed at the highest level. He won the unified WBC, WBO, Ring Magazine, and lineal middleweight titles by defeating Jermaine Taylor in 2007. He made three successful defenses. He finished his career with a 40-2 record, including in that 34 knockouts. Many of you know him by the Ghost, but he hails right here from Youngstown, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome on Mr. Kelly Pavlik.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Kelly. Obviously, a lot of people, know who you are and, know a lot of your backstory, but could you sort of tell us a little bit about yourself? First of all, how'd you get into boxing?
Youngstown kid, growing up, it's a little tough area, but nothing crazy, just there was a lot of kids in the neighborhood. I played football, Pee Wee football. I played baseball up till probably about 17. And, at the time when I was growing up, it was, especially around like the late 80s, early 90s, all those karate movies were coming out. You had the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and Karate Kids and all that. And so I was just always running around the house, firing kicks off. And I had two older brothers, one 6 years older and the other one's 4 years older than me. And they would go to the boxing gym and mess around. They never took it serious. And I kind of like tugged at my parents to, let me go to the boxing gym. And they didn't want me boxing at all.
Okay.
So finally, after enough kicks and everything else in the house, they're like, we'll get him involved in something. So they took me to do martial arts. And for me, not knocking the martial arts is great, but it was just at that age, there wasn't enough activity. There wasn't enough action. So eventually they took me over to the boxing gym. And from there, I got to meet actually who we talked about a little bit before the show, Harry Arroyo. Jack wasn't there. Harry was the only guy in the gym.
Okay. And,
I got to meet him. I didn't know who he was at the time. When we were leaving, I got in the car. My mom goes, "You know who that was?" And I was like, "No." She goes, "That was a former IBF lightweight champ of the world, Harry Arroyo." And so what a coincidence, Jack ain't there. Nobody's in there. The only person is Harry Arroyo in there. And that's who I meet to actually get me involved in the sport.
Right.
And from there, I signed up, and a couple days into it, actually, I don't know if I was bothering Jack or what, but I ended up sparring, and I got my butt whipped. The kid was more experienced and had more fights. And I'll never forget, I came home the next day, and I ran to my bedroom and started putting all my sweat clothes and everything in a bag. And I come walking out, and my dad goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm going back to the gym to kick that kid's butt." And my dad, I think that, he was hoping I was done. After I got my butt whipped, they didn't want me fighting no more. They thought I would quit, but did the opposite.
Well, a lot of times now you even hear parents like they don't want their kids going into even football and things like that. So I can only imagine what your parents would do, when it's a one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat sport too.
Exactly.
So you mentioned Harry Arroyo. Was there anyone else locally that inspired you to get into boxing?
No, in general, I was weird. There was never nobody. You wouldn't have came in my bedroom and seen Sugar Ray Robinson or Sugar Ray Leonard or Harry Arroyo or Ray Mancini. I didn't have anyone certain that like I looked up to.
Sure.
I guess I was just a big fan in general. I remember watching like Oscar De La Hoya coming up. You know, obviously you had Ray Mancini, Harry Arroyo, Jeff Lampkin, and guys, and Greg Richardson from the area that were world champions. Yeah, you want to be a part with them, and that's an influence. You know, don't get me wrong, but there was never a situation where, like, you know, a lot of fighters would coming up when they're young, they have like a cutout of like a Toro Gotti or you know, Ray Mancini or somebody. I never got that far into it where I just picked one person and I was like, who? I was just a fan overall, and I think that helped me more in the sport because I took a little bit from here, I took a little bit from here, a little bit from here, and I think, in my opinion, that's one of the biggest ways to learn how to do something.
Okay. So you had mentioned, you know, getting in the ring early on, sparring, you kind of got whooped on a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, that obviously motivated you to get back in the ring. Some people would go the other way, but that motivated you to get back in there and kind of turn the tables on other people.
Absolutely. I mean, and it did, you know, next time I got the better of that kid. But yeah, it was just, you know, it's the one-on-one aspect of it. I love all sports. I do. Like I said, I loved playing baseball. Football, you know, I loved it, but it was just too hard to do what I really loved, you know, in boxing, to play football, baseball all year long, and then really give boxing the time that it needed. But yeah, it was the one-on-one aspect of boxing that I really liked, you know, like, it's kind of selfish, but it ain't, you know, like if I won, there was nobody, I don't have to say, oh yeah, well, I got a touchdown, but that kid got 3 other ones. You know, that's why we won. I did it myself. And then when you lose, you ain't got nobody else to blame either, though. That's the part that sucks.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. So, you know, we all hear the nickname, the Ghost. Could you tell us about how that came to be? Or
that was a little bit of a coincidence, and it was kind of cool. First of all, nobody I knew of was nicknamed the Ghost.
Yeah.
So it was different. But it all started, it was an amateur tournament, and it was in Cleveland. And I was like the only white kid in that tournament, you know, and I went in there, and, you know, all the kids, I was friends with a lot of them Cleveland guys because all the years of coming up and fighting in the Lake Erie Region 5, you know, you know each other. And, you know, so they called me Ghost. And they were calling me the one fight. And there was the championship fight for the Cleveland Golden Gloves. And I went there and I was just beating the kid up. And I was slick. But at that point in the amateur, I was a real slick fighter. I didn't get hit much. And the fight was over. And this was the VHS days. And came home. And my brother he wasn't able to go to the fight. And we put it on VHS. And he watched it. And he goes, man, he's like, you move like a ghost in there. So it was kind of 2 different reasons I was getting called Ghost. And after that, it was just kind of stuck. It was a nickname that was, you know, nobody had it, and it was pretty cool.
That is cool. That's a cool story. All right. So, and we were talking also before the show started a little bit about one of your former teammates, Joe Schiavone.
Yeah.
He was telling me, I believe he was a senior and you were a freshman, and you were kind of coming up the ranks a little bit. And he said you whooped on him a little bit. And
oh, don't let Joe lie to you. Joe had the age, and a lot of times Joe would still give me a little bit of a smack around a little bit. Yeah, Schiavone's Joe, his dad Lou, terrific people. I mean, I love them guys, and they were a big part of Team Pavlik when I was coming up. They're awesome. Joe had a big left hook. Joe would hit you with that left hook, and you know you felt it. It was almost like a bear claw. Okay. And he looked for that punch. So what helped me coming up was when I was sparring Joe was I knew what to look for. You know, that big left hook, and you don't want to get hit by something. You get out of the way.
Oh yeah.
So
okay. All right. So how early on could you give us like approximate age when someone identified you as like, man, this kid, we gotta, you know, watch this kid. He's got something special.
It was hard. Again, going back, I had my first amateur fight. I think it was 94. I started boxing in 93. I fought a kid who had 30-some amateur fights, was a 2-time Ohio State Fair champion, junior Olympic champion. Okay. And I went in there and I beat the crap out of him. And I'll never forget, I always had big feet. Like I wear a size 14 now, but it was a sight to see when I was a kid at 11. Yeah. I mean, I was so skinny, you know, if I turned sideways and stuck my tongue out, I looked like a zipper. But I had big feet like that long. And I was beating this kid up. I was winning easily. And I tried doing the ollie shuffle, and that didn't turn out good. And I never did it again after that. But so I beat him, and I went on and won a couple fights, and I think people knew I was just tough and everything else, but I would have to take time away because of football, Pee Wee football. And then after that, kind of went into the baseball, and I still was able to box while I played baseball, but you weren't still getting the time, and there was some tournaments I was missing. I would say right around 15 years old was when like I got really serious with boxing. I think everybody started really taking me for real, and I went to a couple of regional tournaments in Cincinnati. And not only was I boxing people's ears off, but I was stopping them. You know, I was stopping them with body shots and headshots, and I think it really garnered a lot of attention from people in the sport. And then I would say right about 16, I just went on a big time winning spree. You know, I don't know many other guys in the area that did what I did in such a short period of time in the amateurs. I think in '98. I won 2 national titles, and then early on in '99, I won another national tournament under 19, which is a big tournament. And right there, I mean, I had everybody's attention. I had guys from Lou Duva to Don King to Top Rank, who I ended up signing with. I mean, they were knocking at my door, and I wasn't even on the Olympic team. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was just one of them things I think they seen because of the little bit of experience I had. Most of them kids, when they go into the open division, the amateurs, they already got about 120 fights. I went to the open division. I had like 40, you know, and I was able just to kind of do what I did in that short period of time. And it got a lot of attention. And I think right there about 16, even 17. At 17, I was already established.
Okay.
You know? People knew if I was in a tournament.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of them were trying to move some of their kids out of that weight class.
Right.
You know, so I say right about then.
Okay. All right. So can you talk to us, whether it be an amateur or professional, or maybe even how they're different, about the type of training you would put in, how you would prepare, how long you would prepare, you know, were you eating differently, you know, diets, things like that?
Well, for everybody else who has their ways that I trained, you know, one of the big things that I take pride in is the fact that, you know, I was in really great shape. I think I was in the middleweight rankings. I'm up there really high as far as punches per round.
Okay.
So that goes to show you, you know, the condition that I was in and the training that I did. Everybody's different. I trained about seven hours a day. I would go, you know, Jack would have me run in the morning. He was there to run too, so there was no easy runs. As soon as you started slacking off, Jack would be on the horn, beeping it, or rub the engine up to scare me a little bit. So I ran every day. After that, it would either be Rockies or Ironman Warehouse, but it was just brutal training, you know, and I was there about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Then I had the boxing gym, which sometimes I could be there up to 3 hours, you know, long. And then we'd always finish off with something at the Y, whether it be a pickup basketball game or swimming, which I like the way that we did that, because after a while it becomes repetitious and it becomes really boring and you don't look for it, and it's almost torture. So what we would do at night, more so to keep the calorie down, but it was also cardio training, we would do something fun like basketball, you know, or go swim. To me, swimming wasn't fun, but it was different.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't the same as
break up like a monotonous schedule.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we did. And it was a lot, and you had to, you know, Ironman Warehouse, it was brutal training. Paul Dunner, right over here, he still has it, I believe. He put me through crazy workouts. Rockies with the weightlifting, we do super lightweight, but no exaggeration, maybe 450 reps a body part.
Wow.
You know, it don't seem like a lot, but when you start doing it, it is. And especially after already putting 3 miles of running in and everything else that you got going.
So I've seen, at least on YouTube, some clips of you, you know, you're doing a little bit unorthodox training where you're pushing tires and things like that. Was that part of it as well?
Yeah, I took a lot of that. Even before Ironman Warehouse, I did a lot of that on my own. One of the countdowns, I mean, I lived right, St. Matthias on the south side of Youngstown and Lansingville was my backyard. Okay. So I took a lot into my own hands. You know, I worked on a lot of the speed and agility as much as I could up there. And then I'd also work on, I would take a tire up. I didn't have a tractor tire, not many tractors on the south side of Youngstown. So I'd take a car tire and I would hit that, you know, 10 times from the right side, 11 times or 10 times from the left side. up and down. So I took a lot of that. And then the Ironman warehouse opened up shortly after that. Dunner ended up getting his place. It was just easier to go somewhere where he actually had stations and everything for it. So.
Okay. All right. Very good. Kelly, before we get into your career, I'd like to ask you about like what you think right now of the state of boxing. So, MMA's kind of taken a huge chunk out of at least the advertising dollar for boxing, but it's still very, very popular worldwide. So what's your opinion on the state of boxing as it stands right now in 2020?
Quarantine didn't help. Boxing before the quarantine, I would say since 2018 into 2017 was making a climb. UFC is big, and I got a lot of friends that are in the UFC, and I would just say mixed martial arts in general, because you got the Bellator and other ones that have a nice following. It's big, and I think the structure that they set it up for is a little better than boxing. But you have one guy who's kind of monopolizing the UFC, and it's easier for big fights to be made when you have just one promoter who runs it. Boxing, you have many different promoters out there, which I think is better for the fighter and overall. And you see boxers get paid more than UFC guys. I think somebody eventually needs to take a stand against it, maybe. But Dana's doing what Dana does. I mean, he's good at it, and he's built that from ground up. It's big, and I get that. I think the problem with boxing is when there ain't big names out there no more. I heard things that are kind of like asinine. All right, I hear, well, because fighters just ain't good anymore. Yeah, well, that's because you don't watch it. You know what I mean? There's a difference. You can't say. We have this argument on my podcast all the time. Like, it's not really an argument; it's the truth. It's science. Fighters, athletes in general, this day and age, are just bigger, faster. Oh yeah, it is. Just the sports training, sports dieting, supplementing, everything is just that much more advanced. It's like comparing a phone from 1930 or a TV from the 30s till now. And I heard things, even people when they get desperate, and I school them on that. They go, well, they had better technique. So now you're telling me that Harry Grubb in 100 years ago, after 100 years of breaking down film, studying, and working on the sport of boxing, that his technique was better, right? Yeah. He fought like the Fighting Irish mascot. Yeah. So boxing, those are what you usually hear, like, I just don't watch it anymore. Okay, well, keep it at that. Don't say that it's not the same. These guys actually fight, compared to the yesteryears where guys won a world title and they actually fought guys that were 0-2, 0-3, 25-23. These guys today, they may only fight twice a year, but they're fighting good comp, and they're not 0-2. They're fighting guys that that could fight. If they fight more than 2 times a year, they fall into the part of getting hit a lot and becoming punchy, and then everybody. So if you retire too early, you retire too soon, or you had a personal issue. If you fight too long, and then you're no good, and nobody has no use for you because you're punchy and you can't win. But boxing is still big. The numbers in the box office and everything else is still pretty good. 2017-18, this quarantine hasn't helped. Overall, yes, the UFC is doing better, I think, numbers-wise. But still, when you take Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, and put them together, it's still higher numbers, I believe. I don't think a UFC fight broke that record yet, pay-per-view sales. So it goes to show you that it's still that big that its top stars does a better pay-per-view than a top star from UFC. But overall, I think UFC is just killing it with the way they're marketing and everything else. And I would be crazy to say that the boxing is bigger than the UFC right now. Okay. But you just got to let it out. People got to start watching and quit being so picky and saying boxing ain't the same because Roberto Duran and, Spinks don't fight anymore. Sure.
So I want to ask you next a little bit about you hear Mike Tyson's getting back in the ring. You hear Roy Jones Jr. So those two are fighting, and then I believe Pacquiao and McGregor are scheduling a fight soon. So what's your thoughts about those former biggest names? And I know McGregor's more like a UFC guy getting in the ring. So what's your thoughts on both of those fights?
If you got the time for it, I can explain to you. So the Tyson, I'm not a big fan of Tyson Jones. I mean, I'm fighting. I'm a huge fan of Tyson and Jones. overall. You know, I think they were great for boxing, what they did in their career, amazing. But you know, they're old. Mike Tyson. People have seen a clip of him hitting pads on Facebook, and they're like, "Oh my God, he looks great." I could go and hit the pads right now and look great. You know, we've done it since we were kids. It's a totally different ball game when you're getting somebody in there and you're fighting and they're punching at you. I don't know the whole thing behind it. I don't think anybody still knows if it's all charity. They say there's no referees or judges, so they're not wearing a headgear, but I don't know how hard they're going at each other. So there's too much out there. Like, I don't know ifs and whats, you know, how it's going to happen. If they want to do it, I guess it's cool. De La Hoya's mentioned making a comeback now. The Pacquiao-McGregor, now that's a little different, okay? McGregor is a combat fighter, so it's not boxing, but it's combat. I get it. You know, he's used to getting hit with knees, elbows, and everything else. Everybody thought that he would beat Mayweather. Mayweather played with him. And that was a 41-year-old Mayweather who didn't fight for 2.5 years and still toyed with McGregor in boxing. You had MMA fans that really thought McGregor was going to beat Mayweather. And I was like, no, that's like me saying that Floyd Mayweather could go over into the UFC and beat Khabib. It ain't going to happen.
Totally different sport.
He stands a good chance of beating McGregor because McGregor is more of a stand-up guy. Floyd has a better chance of fighting McGregor in the UFC. Now, a guy like Khabib, who has the wrestling, jiu-jitsu background and striking, that's a totally different ballgame. And I would be crazy to say Mayweather will go over and beat him. But with Pacquiao and McGregor, that's another thing. Like, McGregor's coming over to boxing and he's cherry picking. He was a lot bigger than Mayweather. I bet you he was every bit of 35 pounds heavier fight night. If you watched the fight, McGregor's one leg looked the size of both of Floyd Mayweather's. And Floyd Mayweather was a lot bigger than Manny Pacquiao. Overall, if I had to pick, I'm going to go with Manny Pacquiao because it's boxing. I just think it's unfair that the size difference. Again, McGregor's not a boxer, but he's a combat fighter. So go call out, bring in Canelo, bring in Bivol, bring in one of those middleweights, those real middleweights or super middleweights that are the same exact weight as McGregor, and let him fight one of those guys in a boxing ring. Be a lot different. You know? But it's good for the sport too. If it's going to bring people, like we're just talking about, if it's going to add the numbers to the sport, you know, I hear a lot of boxing fans with that YouTuber. What's his name? That's boxing every once in a while. K something or.
I've seen him. I can't think of the name.
Anyways, he has like 2 million followers on YouTube. And people were like, that's horrible. You shouldn't be doing that. And like me and my co-host on the Punchline were like, listen, if that's going to help and that's going to bring people to watch, I don't care. And the guy actually, you know what? He looked pretty good fighting for a YouTuber. I mean, you could tell that he trained and, you know, he didn't make the sport look bad. Really, not that bad at least. So.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So Kelly, let's get in a little bit into your career. And you fought some just unbelievable great fighters. You fought Edison Miranda, Jermaine Taylor, Bernard Hopkins, Gary Lockett, I believe, Rubio.
Yeah, Rubio was the big one that a lot of people don't realize either. A lot of not like non-boxing people. Rubio was a guy after I beat him and easily beat him. He went on to win 11 fights and won a world title.
Wow. And
knocked out David Lemieux, who gives all these guys good fights. He knocked him out. So Rubio was another big one that, you know, I don't get the credit for.
Okay. So out of those guys I named, or maybe someone I didn't, who would you say your toughest opponent was, whether it was a win or a loss? I don't want, you know, I don't want to put you on blast there.
I'm not, you know, and I'm not going to elaborate on it. I've been doing it all the time now recently with the 2 losses, but all I can say is this, for people, the Hopkins fight, it was not my night. And it's well documented too, you know, through big time writers in the sport and the Atlantic City Boxing Commission. Jack Lowe and all the guys, you know the situation for that fight with Hopkins. You know, I don't use the excuse jumping up 2 weight because I jumped up 2 weight classes for that fight. That had nothing to do with it either. I wasn't even close to 80% that night of the fight. Okay. And how I use that, styles make fights, and I don't ever use because one person and another guy, they both fought the same opponent and something happened. I don't use that as a measuring stick. But on the flip side of it, Jermaine beat, I'll explain it like this. Jermaine beat Bernard Hopkins twice. They were close fights.
Mm-hmm.
It could have gone either way. But Jermaine beat him twice. I beat Jermaine twice. I knocked Jermaine out and then beat him by decision twice. Then I go in against Hopkins, and Hopkins, and I ain't gonna lie, beat my ass. He beat me hands down. If you can't tell if something was wrong, though, like if I would have went in against Hopkins and won 4 rounds and didn't get beat like I did against him, then, you could say I got outclassed and that he beat me because it was just a different fight.
Sure.
But the way I looked in that fight, if you can't tell that was not Kelly Pavlik in that fight, then I don't know. You don't know sports. Like, really, like, you should not be allowed to watch sports. If I was able to do to Jermaine Taylor what I did to Jermaine Taylor, not saying I should go beat Hopkins, but it should not have been like that. It don't happen. And there hasn't been a fight in boxing where it happened unless it was a quick knockout.
Okay.
So what I mean by, again, like I said, if I went and won 4 or 5 rounds and or 3 rounds, but it was somewhat competitive other rounds and he won, okay, that happens. I do get that. But the way so that goes to show what happened, with that fight leading into it. And I don't ever like bring it up, but there was a book on it where Thomas Hauser was a big time writer, and he wrote for New York Times and everything else, did a bunch of big books on Muhammad Ali. And there's actually a book out now by Thomas Hauser. I'll send you the link one time if anybody wants to read it.
Sure.
And Thomas Hauser I call it how he sees it. Like a blue bird is blue. You know what I mean? And he has no favoritism or anything like that. And he was in a locker room and he wrote down, and takes notes. And he put what happened, when a doctor and the commission, the head of the commission was in the locker room for the medication I was on and everything else. So that was all there. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, Bernard took advantage, and that's what a great fighter is supposed to do. Bernard Hopkins is probably the best middleweight of all time. People will say Hagler because Hagler was of yesteryear. You know what I mean? And them guys, no matter what, you could say Godzilla's going to fight Tommy Hearns or Marvin Hagler, and there's no way Godzilla could beat Hagler or Hearns. But what Bernard Hopkins did in his career and the size, he was a 6'2", big middleweight, crafty. It sucked, man. And I would have to say Hopkins was probably up there. He was just smart, right moves. Bernard Hopkins probably has the best footwork in boxing. And what's weird about that is everybody, when they think of footwork, they think of like flashy, like Pernell Whitaker or somebody who dances, or Hector Camacho. But no, footwork is those quick little moves, the foot placement, putting it there at the right time. That's what makes a hell of a fighter and great footwork. And that was Bernard Hopkins. The next one, Sergio Martinez and Jermaine Taylor. I don't know. Sergio Martinez was good. Okay. He was fast. But that was another fight where 9th round hit the wall. I was ahead on the scorecards. I figured out Martinez's style, middle rounds. If anybody watched that fight, I was dominating those middle rounds. I dropped him and I hurt him, but I hit the wall. And everybody says the cuts, but the cuts wasn't the reason I lost that. If I got cut or not, I wouldn't have ended up winning that fight. He would have won those last. And Martinez is just a sharp, fast fighter. But I still have to say overall, him or Taylor, the second fight with Taylor was just tough. It was a tough fight. And skill-wise, they're both up there.
Okay. Is there anyone?
The hardest, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I
got to tell everybody no. Miranda, though. So Miranda was known to be, he was like the monster at that time.
Yeah.
Everybody was afraid to fight Miranda. He hit like a mule and he was knocking everybody out. Miranda was a bad dude. And I went to that fight and you could try to prepare mentally, he hits that hard. And, but until you get in there and you get hit, you carry that punch, even his little punches, so the hardest puncher and the worst I felt after a fight was definitely Miranda.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, that answered one of my later questions, but, is there anyone, during your career that you wanted to fight that you didn't get the opportunity to?
Yeah, there was a handful of them. I tried because I did want all the belts. I didn't want to pay the sanctioning fees on all the belts,
Right.
but I wanted all of them for the trophy case.
Could you, I'm sorry to interrupt, could you explain how that works, the sanctioning fees and the belts and all that?
The best I can. I can't remember the exact percentages. So you have the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO. Those are the 4 major belts. Now, everybody says they want one, but people are complaining now that enough fights ain't getting made with 4 of them.
Right.
Can you imagine how many prospects would be sitting by the time they got their shot?
Sure.
Would be ruined if you just kept it to one title. So you can't do that. But you have 4 of them out there. And each one of them, that's how they make their money. Like when you fight for that title, you got to pay a sanctioning fee for that. And if it's, so if you're fighting for $2 million and say you pay 10%, you know, or 8%, and I think some of them just take a set fee. I don't know. Again, going back on it, I don't want to over talk it or talk about something I don't know for when I don't have the right numbers. But it's a pretty penny. So even out of a $500,000 purse,
sure,
after you got to pay everybody else, and then you're taking 15 here or 10,000 here, it adds up.
Oh yeah.
So what a lot of people do is when they win those belts, okay, and they become undisputed. Not a lot of people, but the little bit that has accomplished that, they vacate maybe 2 of them.
Okay.
Sometimes they may even vacate all 3 of the other belts and they'll just keep 1. So the public knows that they're a world champion and they still have 1 belt that they can defend and make the money. And when you get to a name like Mayweather and Pacquiao, I don't even believe that you really need a belt. You know, those guys draw enough themselves. Right. But yeah, so a lot of fighters will vacate the belts so they don't have to pay the sanctioning fee. And that's why I think it's hard for a lot of guys to become undisputed anymore, because a lot of these fighters ain't holding on to it. But on the flip side, when we were talking earlier about me being lineal and maybe I should have been undisputed, Jermaine did that. You know, Jermaine beat Bernard Hopkins and became undisputed middleweight champion of the world. He vacated 2 belts and they ended up just calling him the lineal champion. I beat Jermaine Taylor. Okay. And I should have, by all rights, I should have been undisputed because if I'm not mistaken, the only way to lose the undisputed tag is if you lose a fight at middleweight for a title. Okay. Jermaine never lost until he fought me a fight to anybody else. He vacated the belt, so he still should overall was the undisputed middleweight champion. Okay. And that's up in the air to this day. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, and I interrupt you. I apologize, but who I was asking who was someone that you didn't get to fight that maybe you wanted to.
So with that being said, Paul Williams was a big fight. I wanted him, and then a lot of people said I was ducking him or the media. And Paul Williams was coming up from welterweight. Okay. And right at that time, because I was supposed to fight Paul Williams twice. And I think the one time was when we ended up going to fight Bernard Hopkins. So I always tell people, like, yeah, I jumped. I was afraid to fight a guy 2 weight classes below me, and I jumped up 2 weight classes to fight a legend like Bernard Hopkins. It would have been a great fight with Paul Williams. Paul Williams was very tall. He was 6'3", and he fought at welterweight. Then he fought at junior middleweight, and he was coming to middleweight to fight me. He threw probably about high 90s to 100 punches around. But on the flip side of that, I threw that many punches around, and I was a natural middleweight who could hit. So I don't know if Paul Williams would have been able to have all that gas in the tank later in the rounds against me. And that was a big fight. I think the public would have liked it. So that was one of them. Again, Arthur Abraham. So I could have had another belt for the trophy case. Joe Calzaghe was a big one. But at that point, after talking with my promotional company, when Joe Calzaghe was big at super middleweight, there was no need for me to go to super middleweight. I was still making middleweight not easy, but I wasn't killing myself big time. Sure. So there was no reason, stay there, defend the titles. It was more money to defend my titles than it would have been to go up and fight Calzaghe for his titles, because Calzaghe was big in the boxing world. But again, I don't think Calzaghe had the draw to really bring in more money than I would have made defending my own titles. Okay. All right.
So I guess this question kind of answers itself. The bigger the name, the bigger the prize.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. So let's go to the first Jermaine Taylor fight when you win the belt. This is a 2-part question, I guess. So one, what was going through your head when you won? And And then 2, what's it like? And because I was watching your interview after that fight, what's it like to be hit that many times, throw that many punches? You know, you beat up him, he beat up you a little bit, and then get interviewed after the fight. I could only imagine.
I loved Larry Merchant,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes I think he got hit in the head on the side of the ring when he asked some of the questions that he asked to
Sure.
a fighter after a fight. Winning it's hard to explain, man. It's your brain, how fast the brain works, and everything that's going on. You absorb it, but you don't absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard. It really is hard to explain. Everything goes, you know, and it's all that work, you know, before a fight. If a fighter says that they're not nervous or stressed out about it, they're full of crap. You're nervous you got a lot of pressure. First of all, for your city and everybody behind you, you got 7,000 people making that trip 7 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You also know that might be your only shot at that, you know, winning that world title. If you don't win,
Sure.
there's just so much. So
that fight was in Atlantic City, correct?
Atlantic City, yep. So the pressure is crazy, and then in between that, you're doing interviews, and you know, you start doing the charitable work and everything else, and just a lot. And when you win that world title, after, like, when you're able to say, you know, and the fight's over, all the nerves are gone for probably about a month and a half. And, you know the pressure is going to be there, but at that point you don't care. You're celebrating that moment. It's just so many emotions running through you. It's crazy. And, at the same time, you're beat up, you're banged up. You don't feel it for a short period because of the adrenaline, but you know, when that wears off, you feel it. It was a great fight. It's a great feeling. I don't know. Then we'll go into the questions that when they interview you after the fight. So, okay, just won a world title. I think I ran more after I knocked him out around celebrating than I did in the fight. I expended more energy doing that, and everything slows down a little bit, and you won. And the referee picks your hands up, and you're declared winner. Larry Merchant comes over, interviews you, and he asks you some questions that, you know, the fans want to hear, and you answer them. And then he hits you with a question. What was going through your mind in that second round when you got... So first of all, yeah, I just got my brain rattled.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he asked that question, and I remember the answer that I gave him. People still laugh about it. I go, you really want to know what's going through my mind? Oh, shit, this is going to be a long night. And that was the only thing I could think of, because that's what was going through my mind. I was fortunate when I got dropped. A lot of times there's different things that happen when you get knocked down. You get knocked down and you're like really out of it. And you don't know, and it's just like instinct that you get back up. And what I got hit with was the equilibrium shot behind the ear. So my legs went, but I could actually pinpoint, like, I heard people in the fans, and I knew who they were, who was screaming for me to get up. You know, I knew where the count was. I knew everything that was going on. I just couldn't get these under me, you know? And, but I knew, I remember, like, at that point when he was in the locker room, Smoger, the referee, telling me, as long as I hold on, as long as I show that I'm with it. So, like, when I flew across the ring after I got up and I grabbed him, I hooked him. As soon as I hooked him, I started hitting him to the body. That showed Smoger that I'm there. You know, it's just the legs. Right. And Smoger, in his way of looking at it, is, as long as he ain't getting hit, you know, I'm not going to stop him.
And he was more of a he would let you fight,
let
right?
You go, yeah, he'd let you go. And again, I think most referees at that point, because I flew across the ring, but again, I turned around, I grabbed him. I didn't get hit with anything in that process, and it was just one of those things. Like, if I could hold on, I knew I'd be okay. But yeah, sometimes you get asked questions like that, especially after a fight like that. First of all, yeah, I got rattled in the second round. I was filled with emotion. I just won the world title, and they ask you questions, and sometimes I don't know how to answer them the way that, like I said, I think maybe they got hit in the head with something, you know, for asking that type of question. But Larry Merchant, I mean, he was great with HBO, but it was just a funny question to ask.
Now, you had mentioned, you know, the day after, or, you know, once the adrenaline comes back down, how long does it take you to recover from a fight like that, swelling and just in general?
That's a really good question. It takes some time. I mean, I know there was times like for a week after the fight, I just wasn't myself. You're just drained.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain body. It's not like, I mean, people, they don't understand because they see football where you got big bodies hitting each other. Yeah, obviously we know they're going to be sore. But in boxing too, I mean, you're getting hit. You're getting hit on the shoulders. You're getting hit in the ribs, like your rib cage and your stomach, just your organs in your stomach.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of fighters pee blood for a good couple hours after a fight from the body blows. And being tired and breathing heavy for 36 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Without taking a time out besides the minute break. It just takes a toll on the body. You get elbowed in the head, even if a guy is not getting hit much in a fight, but every time you see him grab on the inside, you got to understand that elbow is going against skull, against the face, against the shoulder. Yeah, you're banged up. It's pretty brutal, and it took me usually about a week. I'd start coming out of it about a week into it. So.
Is there anything you would do? Would you do like ice baths or
You could. I let it run its course though.
Okay.
It sounds weird. I liked feeling like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not up here. I'm talking about just body. You know? I knew that I did something. If I didn't now, especially after a fight, because you don't have to go train, so it wasn't affecting my training. Now during training, when I'm like beat up or I got a injury or anything like that, oh, absolutely. You had to go straight to now they got cryotherapy.
Yep.
But then there wasn't cryotherapy. There was the ice bath, and because blood is the biggest thing. Like the circulation of blood is what heals. So you could do whatever it is, whether it's ultrasound, massage. The main thing is getting the blood to circulate. So I would do a lot of stuff when I was training. Yeah, because the longer I was out or the more hurt I was, the less I could train. And it affected my training. But after a fight, no, I just let it go, man. It was, I like the feeling. Let us run a course.
All right,
that's it.
Okay. Well, a lot of times with athletes, you hear of like pregame rituals and, maybe certain music they listen to or certain routines they go through. I guess another two-part question. One, what did you do before a fight? And two, when that intro music starts playing, what's going through your mind?
Yeah. That's fight time.
Mm-hmm.
Once you hear the intro, there's no turning back. But what we did, I had a buddy, Youngstown cop, actually, Mike Cox. He was my corner man. And before him was Tank the Sissio, and I had Brian Zordich early in my career. So I let them all know, I had it was a superstitious type thing. Every night before the fight, I went and seen a movie. It was kind of like my relaxed time. We made weight. I ate, and then I would go have popcorn and stuff like that. We would watch a movie at the movie theater. And that was kind of like my little break away from, because you're nervous at that point because you made weight. That part's done. But it clears your mind for a little bit. That's your little break. We would do that. As far as the music, I stayed with, early on, I came out with a couple of things. But boxing, the big part that I always looked at is ESPN or any cable network, before you get to premium television like HBO and Showtime, you had a certain period of time to come out. And that music shut off quick. So our whole thing going into that was to find something that got somebody out of their seat quickly.
All right.
You know what I mean? So you had to find the right song. And we did that. We started off with like Disturbed. I had DMX and Limp Bizkit. And then we ended up just finding the one, Here to Stay, which, was just a great concept behind the song. And we played that. And in the beginning of it, the way it started out, it just had the guitar playing, and probably for about 10 seconds. And then it just kicked in, and it got everybody off their seat. If you like rap, or if you like country, if you like rock, that song still got you off your butt. You know? And,
all right.
We stuck with it because it was kind of fell into the superstitious thing too. Like, all right, well, we're
winning.
Yeah, we're winning with this one. Let's not change it.
Okay. All right. Very good. So a couple and
that was my pops. My pops had a huge impact on everything for me. Why I'm at where I'm at now, being able to be retired and having all these different investments. But he did my trunks. I want to say this on air.
Yeah.
He did my trunks, and I had some of the nicest trunks. And I'll never forget this. Like, he would come at first, he would come home and he have a little piece of clothing like this, cloth. He goes, what do you think about this? And I'm looking, it's ugly as hell. I'm going, oh, Dad, no, man. He's like, no, just tear me out. Tear me out. He's like, let me do this, but I'm going to show you. Is this okay? I go, well, I'll hear you out. And when I see the whole thing, I go, but let me tell you, if I don't like it, yeah, do it again. And usually he never failed, man. He came back and then he put all that work in behind the Ohio State trunks too. But all those YSU ones, those beautiful trunks that I had, he, that was him. So, but he did also with the music. He was the one who kind of would tell me, "Oh man, stick with it."
That's good.
And
yeah,
I listen. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So, yeah, big shout out to him, man. He really helped.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And still being in your corner from way back as a kid till even up in your fighting days.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess with those trunks, even I believe Jermaine Taylor had Arkansas. I think he was from Arkansas, and so it was kind of an SEC Big Ten type.
One of the very
showdown.
few times somebody said this, and I forget who it was, and they were with a big company. They said that was the first time that they seen. Now that was 13 years ago. 2 college powerhouses square off against each other in the boxing ring. Because Jermaine had the Arkansas, the exact colors, and then I got the okay from, at the time, I think it was Andy Geiger with Ohio State.
Yep.
And I got the okay from them and Tressel, who I love. I love Tressel to death. He's a great guy, close with him, and he was all about it. But Tressel didn't have the final say. You know?
Yeah.
And we got the exact colors from Ohio State. They said, yeah, absolutely. And we did it. So,
and could you tell us? Somebody on Facebook just asked, what was the name of the song again?
Here to Stay.
Here to Stay.
Yeah.
By Korn.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now I got to ask you too, as a boxer, and it doesn't have to be a boxing movie, but do you have a favorite sports movie, whether it's a boxing movie or non-sports movie?
You can. I mean, on the spot. you ever notice like what movies somebody will ask you what's your favorite movie, and you'll hurry up and rattle something off, and then like later on that night,
like, I should have said this
or
or
this one. So that's always going to happen. But Field of Dreams was a great movie. It wasn't really about baseball, but it was.
Yeah.
Major League. Then you had the boxing. I had The Champ, which is a tearjerker. I think that was a great boxing movie. The Rockies, I'll watch them. It's one of those movies. I don't know how great it was, but they're classics. There's not one that really, I liked. There was a football movie when I was younger, The Program.
Oh yeah,
that was a good one. Longest Yard is pretty good.
Okay,
it's hard. You really got to sit down and think about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're doing a segment in a couple weeks with, we're bracketing off different sports movies.
Let me look at a list of them in case there's one I forgot, and then it would be easier for me to,
send me one in. I'm curious what each category possibly. All right, so with you obviously being a Youngstown guy, a hometown favorite, can you list some of your favorites in Youngstown? So if you brought in some friends from out of town, or maybe some people that you associated with in the boxing world, and brought them to Youngstown, where might you take them around the city?
Oh, that's setting me up. You're gonna have a lot of people comment on that one.
Yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble with anybody else either.
It's just way it is. So food wise, oh man, there's so many. That's the one thing I tell people that we are known for. Is our food. We're right between New York, Chicago, and our food's like right in between. It's a, mix. Even our pizza. There was a kid from Struthers, my corner man, and he was just everything Struthers, and he took these guys from New York, and he took them to the Elmpton.
Oh yeah.
Now listen, the Elmpton's phenomenal pizza, but it's something that you have to acquire a taste for because it's different. You can't take a guy from Manhattan to a place where they put.
There's like 5 cheeses on there. And,
it's not going to go over well. But I would say like the Wedgwoods, they're an out of town person. The Bellarias, Italian Village got great pizza. Food restaurants, I would take them like Springfield Grill. I would take them to the Italian. I got my buddy Frank Guerreri. He has Gia Angelo's. The Italian Village is really good food. Nicolini's. So you know what I mean? I could just keep going.
You could go on.
Then I have a buddy who I'm getting ready to go golf with. Just his burgers alone is Melvin McKee that has Bogies in Coatesville. His food is just unbelievable. And I have to tell you like this, like there's levels two things. So sometimes you have to get out of the area. And I'll never forget, it was a year and a half ago. I'm friends with Chris Santos. He's on Food Network. He does Chopped. He's a judge.
Yeah.
So we went and did my podcast, a remote out of there, and we had him on. He's a big diehard boxing fan. And we got to judge all of his top chefs in Manhattan. He has 3 locations. And it was a burger taste test to see which one goes on the menu. So now you got the top chefs in the world. You know what I mean? And, man, I was eating those burgers, and it was just like something you never tasted. But I must say that Bogey's Melvin's burger, it ain't far off.
And I think he, and don't quote me on this, but I think he might be opening a location at the Southern Park Mall.
I believe he is. So, which is something I'm kind of looking at in that area. Maybe.
All right. Very good.
Not a restaurant.
And
though.
if you, restaurant. That's all right. But if you do, you got to come back on and tell us about it.
Yeah.
So you obviously have a lot of local ties. You know, when we had the fight at the Cavelli Center, I remember, I believe like Brady Quinn was here and Kenny Lofton, and Kenny Lofton's probably one of my favorite athletes of all time.
He's a great
guy.
guy.
You guys were buddies. What are who are some athletes that either maybe not in the boxing world that you looked up to, or that you sort of idolized or became friends with?
I'll tell you one right now, a guy who is doing fantastic for himself right now. Claret was a big one. Even though I was older in Claret, when Claret was getting ready to go to college, I was new boxing. Not new, but I was just early on in my pro career. It wasn't big name by no means at that time. So he was cool, and I'm still I talk with him. AJ Hawk, I still talk with. Bobby Carpenter, I'll tell you, Anthony Schlegel.
I've actually played. We used to play cards together at Ohio State every now and then.
Okay.
Back in the day.
So them guys, I talk to them. When these events come, man, there's so many of them. Matt Brown with the UFC.
Okay.
Matthew Immortal Brown. Friends with him. The list goes on of people. Mike McGlynn, I'm buddies. He was from Austintown. So he played with Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Chiefs, a lot of teams.
I think he might have played with the Colts for a little bit too.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yep. So he played with the Austintown Colts too.
Oh,
so, that's
way
where
back
I played with him. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, the list goes on. Yeah, Troy Smith was cool. Brad Smith. They're from the area though, but there's a lot of guys that I just got to meet and know. And when I see him, we talk and go over to boxing. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Are you a Browns fan?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What do you think about what they're doing right now?
Oh man, it's great. Don't want to be downer here, but it was Kansas City, and it was not Kansas City, Cincinnati, Washington,
yeah,
and Dallas this year is they're struggling,
right?
But the offense put up, it still scares me because the running game is doing great, but we had almost 50 points that last game, and I think Mayfield only threw for 145 yards,
something like that. Yeah.
So it's touchy, man. The defense is shaky. I'm not complaining too much. Like again, they're 3-1, and that's awesome. We'll see what happens. I think the offensive line is doing a little better this year. That's always been my big complaint with the Browns. We got all those number ones since 2001. How many number one quarterbacks?
Right.
It just ain't that somebody's picking a bad quarterback because other teams got quarterbacks that turn out. We never had an offensive line. And I don't care how good your running game is, how good your receivers are. If you ain't got time to throw the ball to them, and especially for a young quarterback, the speed of the game is totally different. Now, I know pro sports, you know what I mean? I don't have to play football. I'm not saying I know everything about football, but when you get a kid coming out of college in his first year, the speed of the game is totally different. College and pros, that's why one's college and one's pros is totally different. And I believe if they don't have time to learn it without getting sacked or blitzed, they never pick it up, and sometimes it's too late. So we'll see how it goes this year, though.
Yeah.
3-1, man.
We'll take it. I think first time since 2001. So
yeah,
it's been a
they
long,
said
long
first
time.
time in 3 games that they had
30 or more.
30 or more since 65 or 68. Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. So we'll tell
how you get
a win is a win, right?
Trick plays or no matter what, take them.
Of course. Something I meant to ask you early on. What's the best venue that you've ever fought in?
Oh, I got to fight at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago, which is a historic building, and especially for fights. That was cool. I did not like it though, because it was they didn't want to pay the high bills on the utilities, so it was hotter than hell in there. I'd have to say MGM and Mandalay Bay were nice. My favorite to fight at, not because it was the nicest or coolest, was obviously Atlantic City. It was more a home, it was just really cool in there. What I liked about that is the lights, because I know, like, when I would walk, you look through there and you see the blue lights. And I always liked them because when I was a kid, you would see a Toro Gotti fight in there, and they had the lights, those blue lights that went across the ceiling. So I don't know, man. I would say the nicest was probably MGM and Mandalay Bay. And then the Atlantic City was pretty cool. I always wanted to fight at Madison Square Garden. Never got the chance to, though.
But just looking through your career, I mean, Vegas, Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even like locally, the Struthers Field houses, people that aren't from here don't realize how cool
and
of
the
a
perks
building
of
that
just
is.
being around. I mean, we got to actually at Dallas Cowboys Stadium control the big scoreboard. We had all the okay from Dallas Cowboys and the promoters, and this one kid who's a big time software guy, and my buddy Justin Fortuna. They, where you could play video games. We were actually hooking up because we had Fight Night tournament going.
Nice.
And it's actually on YouTube where he talked about we were getting ready. We were on the sidelines at Dallas Cowboys. They have like the little suites on the sideline. So we're in there, just playing video. They have everything in there. We're playing video games. So long story short, the perks that you have, like you get to walk around Dallas Cowboy Stadium like you own it. You know what I mean? And that was for the podcast because we have our podcast and we get credentialed. But we know a lot of people too who, come on, let's go do this. We'll go play video games over here, and it was pretty neat. So
very cool. Well, Kelly, we're just about out of time, but I want to say thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and obviously, not just a local legend, but a national legend in the boxing community. And again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, man.
So we will be back on Thursday with Chelsea Spears from WKBN. But again, I'd like to thank Kelly Pavlik. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us. Thank you.